Welcome back, everyone, to the HNL Movement podcast. I'm super excited for this episode because Emily Lindholm is the guest today, and she is the person that writes all of the magnificent podcast show notes. So she is one of the few, I would guess, that has listened to every single podcast episode that we put out. So it's a lot of great things that she has to share too, and I'm super excited to welcome Emily to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, so there's so many things that I think I'm going to learn about you today. I mean, we do, touch base every week, I would say, but it's pretty busy, both of our schedules, so we don't get to talk much more than that. But to get started, why don't you share a little bit about you growing up, your background? I'll spoil it a little bit, but you're really interested into health. You're a Pilates instructor. You do a lot of different things. So why don't you start by sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Kansas City. That's where I live now, in Kansas City. And I've been in and out, but grew up just in the suburbs of Kansas City. And I started with dance. That's my major. That's what I love the most. I grew up just dancing all the time. I was not, I consider dance to be athletic, but if you saw me in gym class, you wouldn't have considered me an athlete. I was one of those kids that would like dodge the ball or it'd hit me in the nose, or I'd get nosebleeds. Like I was not the most savvy at sports. But when it came to dancing or climbing, stuff like that, I've always been really into. And so I grew up doing that. And I started doing competition dance when I was 12. And then I got really serious about it once I started competing. And I got into the dance company at my studio where after that, I just lived at the studio, basically.
Got it. So you mentioned that you got into competitive dancing at 12, but when did you start actual maybe dance lessons or classes?
Yeah, I started at age 5 or maybe 4 or 5. I started. Yeah. And I just started because my friends were doing it. But then I remember there was this one girl who became my teacher later. I watched her and she was just one of those people. She just lit up the stage. You'd see her and she would just take up the room. I mean, everyone, her eyes would turn when she danced. And I saw her and that was it. It was like, I want to be like her.
You're hooked.
And so I started getting more serious and learning. And it wasn't until I was around 10 and she became an instructor. I started taking her classes and then I took private lessons from her for a while. She was like my idol. And then when I was 14, she spotted me and it was in an audition for just where we were going to go in the next competition year. And I showed up the next week to look at the list to see what class I was going to be in and what routines I was going to be in. And I didn't see my name and I was super upset. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't make it. And then someone said, no, you're over here on this list. And she had put me in her group. And I was just like, what? I'm going to dance on stage this whole year with this woman, this girl who, I've been admiring since I was 5. And so I came to her and I was like, is this real? Like, because I was the youngest in that group. And she was like, yes, I've been watching you and I want you in our group. And so that just, made my whole year. And so she just really inspired me. And then I continued. Her and her sister ended up starting their own studio, and they weren't out of high school yet, but they were just amazing dancers. And they trained in LA with a bunch of professionals every year, and they were just phenomenal dancers. And so they went ahead and started their own studio just at the end of high school, and their mom helped them run it and everything. And so I went and joined their studio
Oh,
and continued learning with them. And I just lived there, really. It was my life. Everyone knew me as, the dancer. And
yes. That's so interesting, like how everything kind of comes together in a way that, it paves your path, right? And you've heard me talk about this many times before with other guests.